A landlord has filed a lawsuit against the city of Seattle because he says that the city's tenant protections amount to an unconstitutional taking of his private property. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today. It's coming out of Seattle. I haven't talked about Seattle in a little while, but you know what? The same strong anti-landlord laws that they've been passing, they've had an effect on landlords up there. And a landlord up there has decided to file a lawsuit against the city because they've lost so much money. They've been hit so hard by all of the tenant protection laws and all the hard evictions and, rent control and all that nonsense that now they say, hey, this is unconstitutional. This is a taking of my private property for public use without just compensation. And I tend to agree, okay? So, you know what? Maybe this lawsuit won't pass, but it should get people's attention. It should get people's attention, let them know that, hey, we're struggling out there. That's what we really need, okay? We need to get the voters' attention, because if the people out there who are voting think that, hey, well, you know what, the landlords, they're doing just fine with all these, rent control laws, these strong eviction protections, well, they're not going to do anything to help us. But if they think, hey, we're struggling, if they know that, hey, these businesses are losing millions of dollars and they're about to go bankrupt, well, maybe they will step in and try to change those laws. I don't know. A place like Seattle, there's a lot of socialists up there who tend to believe that the government should own all housing. And I think that's idiotic, but these people, it would be very hard to convince them to change the laws. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So do you believe that all of the tenant protections, strong eviction protections, rent control laws amount to an unconstitutional taking of private property for public use without just compensation? Do you believe that it is a constitutional violation? Okay, I'm just curious what your opinion is. Now, obviously I do, okay? But the courts, they tend to side with these local municipalities and these places that pass these sort of laws. So I don't think this lawsuit is going to go anywhere. But like I said, it does highlight the plight of landlords, and in particular, smaller landlords. Big landlords deal with the same issue, but keep in mind that the small landlords, you're never going to hear about these stories because we don't have the money to file these sort of lawsuits. We just go bankrupt. Okay? Anyway, let's get into this story. This article is coming from the Seattle Times, and it says, Seattle landlord sues over city tenant protections. Let's get into it. A Seattle landlord sued the city Tuesday, claiming an array of tenant protections has rendered an affordable apartment building in the Chinatown International District so financially strapped that it amounts to a violation of the landlord's constitutional rights. Goodman Real Estate, through a subsidiary that owns a 254-unit apartment building near 4th Avenue South and South Jackson Street, filed the lawsuit, calling for unspecified financial damages and a change to city regulations. Our goal is to create the highest level of quality, affordable, and sustainable housing in downtown Seattle for our residents, CEO George Petrie said in a statement. But the city has placed so many restrictions on our ability to do that, it is placing our residents at risk. Now, I want you to keep in mind that lawsuits, hiring lawyers, filing these lawsuits, it costs a lot of money, thousands upon thousands of dollars. So landlords, we don't do this because, we're just greedy and we're not actually losing money. Before a lawsuit like this is filed, and, it has to be fought in court, and, it's going to cost a lot, right? Imagine how much money they lost, okay? If they lost, just a little bit of money, or if they were actually making a profit and they were just greedy and wanted more, they wouldn't have filed the lawsuit. Okay? They lost a lot. And the whole lawsuit is telling that, hey, we are truly struggling. And they're not the only ones. Okay? They're the one who filed the lawsuit, but I'm pretty sure that other landlords are suffering the exact same fate in the city of Seattle. Now, this is part of the reason why, my personal opinion for all of these places where they pass these sort of laws is abandon them. Okay, the big landlords, the small landlords, everyone who wants to be a landlord, abandon these places. Teach them the real lesson. vote with your feet, vote with your money, vote by putting your money elsewhere. That is the only way these people will learn anything. And when they finally figure out that, hey, nobody's building anything, nobody's renting anything here, people are refusing, they're just warehousing their units, or they're converting them over to condos or Airbnbs or whatever, right? When they finally figure out that lesson, well, it'll be too late for them, but you'll be just fine. That's what you really have to worry about. Don't try to prove a point. There is no point to prove, okay? The only thing that matters is you making sure that you don't go bankrupt personally. So if you want to win, don't invest in these sort of places. The city plans to defend the tenant protections, but declined to comment further while the case is ongoing, said City Attorney's Office spokesperson Tim Robinson. It's far from the first time property owners have challenged Seattle's tenant protections, mostly unsuccessfully. Landlords have attempted to block caps on move-in fees, requirements that landlords rent to the first qualified applicant, and pandemic eviction limits, among the other laws passed in the last decade. Goodman's case comes after a rightward shift at City Hall and as affordable housing developers sound the alarm about rising operating costs and, in some cases, trouble collecting rent from tenants. Some landlords have set their sights on convincing the Seattle City Council to loosen or repeal landlord-tenant regulations in response to those challenges. So yeah, they filed multiple lawsuits over a lot of the laws that I have covered in some of my videos in the past, right? And all of those lawsuits have failed. What does this tell you? This tells you that this is a sinking ship, okay? Now, I'm not saying there isn't money to be made, okay? I am not saying that at all. There is a lot of money to be made. And there are operators out there who have the legal team and the property management and everything necessary in order to keep, the checks and balances in place and make excellent money. However, right? I speak to small mom and pops, people who don't have those resources, people who don't want to be taken advantage of. And when I'm talking to those people, this is a waste of time. This is a complete waste of time. If you don't own thousands of units and, have millions of dollars to lose and hope for the best in the future, well, don't waste your time there. Now, I know property is really expensive there, so there ain't a lot of mom and pops who are just coming in there, but you know what, there are some, and that's the bad thing. If you have the ability to rent out even just one house, you could be taken advantage of by the city and the tenants and lose your butt off, okay? And that's just not worth it in my opinion. At the same time, tenant advocates defend the regulations as critical to helping tenants avoid homelessness, which reached a record level in King County this year. Goodman takes a novel legal argument that 6 city regulations together destroyed the Addison on 4th apartment building's value and amounted to a taking, a legal term referring to the government either literally taking property through eminent domain or regulating it so significantly that the regulations constitute a taking without compensation. And I agree with that. I'm sure that most of the landlords on here also agree with that. The regulations, they're so strict that it constitutes a taking. Now, look at the paragraph above that, and they say the tenant advocates say, hey, we need these regulations to prevent homelessness. Preventing homelessness is not the job of a landlord or of a business. That is not our job, okay? That would be like going down to McDonald's and saying, your job is to prevent hunger. They're like, no, our job is to sell hamburgers, okay? And as a rental property owner, my job is to rent housing. It's not to provide housing to everybody in the world who may need it and make sure that no one is homeless. That's idiotic, okay? And you cannot expect the business owner to take on that sort of responsibility unless we are talking about an unconstitutional taking. And that's exactly what I think we're talking about here. But anyway, what do you think, okay? Do you agree with me? Do you believe this is an unconstitutional taking? Or do you believe, like the tenants do, that this is just regulations needed to prevent homelessness? And do you think this lawsuit is going to go anywhere? I really don't, okay? There's a bad track record in terms of these lawsuits against these cities, okay? It seems to me that a lot of these lawsuits, they go absolutely nowhere. So unfortunately, I think this is another one of those negative stories where we're not going to ever see anything come of it, but it does bring attention to the topic.